This video is sponsored by Squarespace. The 2025 Formula 1 season is over. It's time to rank all of the drivers from worst to best. My opinion, but also yours. Almost 3,000 of you voted. So let's see who's right and who's wrong and fight about it in the comments below. My name's Tommo. Let's talk about it. P21, Jack Doohan. It kind of has to be Jack, doesn't it? He only got 6 races at the start of the year. Was sizing up to be alright actually. I think that Q2 exit when Lewis spun and yellow flagged, he looked like he was going to get into Q3 in his very first weekend in F1. It wasn't to be for Jack and he never recovered. Obviously the Suzuki shunt was not good enough, but the writing was on the wall as soon as Alpine brought Colapinto in, so it's hard to put too much critique on Jack. He's testing Super Formula at the moment, which hasn't been going too well. I really hope Jack can turn it around because there is a quality racing driver there, no doubt in my mind. And as for you in P21, you've also gone Jack Doohan, down 1 place from mid-season. You put in P20, then with a score of 2.49 out of 10. P20, Yuki Tsunoda. This one hurts. I really don't want to do this. P17 in the mid-season report was Yuki, but he's P20 by the end of the year. Look, the start of the year was looking good at Racing Bulls. His first 3 opportunities at qualifying, he was Q3 and won SQ3 every single time. Yet the ill-fated move to Red Bull just never really worked out for him, did it? That Imola shunt really put him back in terms of car development upgrades and that, so he was always kind of off plan relative to Max, but that was his own doing. There were plenty of things out of his doing, you know, wrong tyre pressures, being sent out at poor times in qualifying. The team certainly didn't hold up their end of the bargain in his side of the garage at all times either. And Yuki was much closer by the end of the year in Mexico, Brazil, Abu Dhabi to Max in qualifying at least. But it's too little too late. He averaged 0.6 over the course of the season. It just wasn't good enough, and you have to judge by the results that you see. And as for you in P20, you've also gone Yuki Tsunoda. Again, down 3 positions from your mid-season ranking of him in P17 with 3.18 out of 10. Yuki coin has crashed. P19, Lance Stroll. Mid-season I put in P20, so he's gained 1 position, and this is one actually a lot of you thought was very harsh in my mid-season report, putting in P20, and you will probably think it's harsh me putting in P19 as well. Australia, Silverstone, Hungary, Zandvoort were all good, but other than that, it just was nowhere near good enough for a driver of his experience, been at the team for as long as he has been, to be beaten 29-1 in qualifying against Fernando Alonso, including sprint qualifyings over the course of the year, averaging 3.5 tenths behind your teammate. You look at how many points Fernando scored in the end, and Lance did bag a decent amount, but for me, in a qualifying formula, he lucked into those points way more than Fernando did, certainly, and just is not doing good enough for a driver of his experience, of the opportunity that's been given to him. It's so frustrating to watch him be so inconsistent. You know, great in the rain. There's a talented driver there, but with so many juniors around him at the back of the field, it's just disappointing. And as for you in P19, you've gone Franco Colapinto with 3.43 out of 10, gaining 2 positions from your P21 that you put him in the mid-season report. P18, Franco Colapinto. I had him last, 21st in the mid-season report. However, look, I think when you look at his 18 weekends in total, right, after taking over from Jack Doohan, the lack of preparation, the fact that he's within, 2.5 tenths of Gasly head-to-head qualifying wise is pretty good. Started to struggle towards the end of the season a little bit again. The pace relative to Pierre fell off a bit, but in an underpowered Alpine with all of that pressure representing Argentina as well. And he was so close to a point with his P11 in Zandvoort. There's a lot to be said for Franco improving next year. I have belief and confidence it will happen. And for you in P18, you've gone Lance Stroll. 3.52 out of 10, 1 position lost from the mid-season rating. P17, Liam Lawson, down 1 place from my mid-season rating of P18. He was dealt a bad hand by Red Bull, no question. Only 2 weekends is nowhere near enough of sample size for him to develop any kind of confidence. And as much as I don't think he necessarily would have done a better job than Yuki, I also don't think he would have done a much worse job, to be fair. At least give him a chance, and they didn't. They demoted him back to Racing Bulls, then he's on the other side of the garage to where he had been at the end of last year, so it wasn't like a seamless integration back into the team. And Hadjar had already got his feet under the table and was doing well. And look, the end of season head-to-head, average about a tenth and a half between them. It was about 2 tenths in the first half. It's about a tenth in the end, but it is consistently Hadjar ahead of Lawson, and Hadjar is the one with the less experience. I just hope for Liam he's going to get the full 2026 season. He'll get a full pre-season testing as well alongside Arvid Lindblad, really give him the opportunity to show the best that he can do, getting the same preparation as everyone else rather than being chucked in mid-season to, you know, replace Ricciardo or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, that was so frustrating to see sparks be there, but him never really consistently able to realise them throughout this season. And as for you in P17, Lewis Hamilton with 4.33 out of 10, dropping 3 places from where you put him mid-season. Ouch. P16, Esteban Ocon for me. Had some very good peaks in China, Monaco, Abu Dhabi finale as well. Turned that weekend around. His first season at the team as well, that has to be said. Alongside a rookie who actually within the Haas environment, all the FP1s that Bearman had was more experienced. Obviously nowhere near his experience in F1, but you know what I'm saying. However, you look at the streak from, you know, Italy round 16 to Qatar 23, genuinely painful to watch. And I'm so glad for him he had that uptick in Abu Dhabi, because that would have been a long winter if not. And we know, of course, Toyota Gazoo Racing are taking over title sponsorship of that team next year. That pressure from Toyota is going to come, and Ocon needs to step up. You know, I rate him very, very highly, probably more than the average person does. However, in this rankings, actually in P16, you've also gone for Esteban Ocon with 5.16 out of 10. So a bit of a jump up in score, 3 places down from where you put him mid-season. P15, Gabriel Bortoleto. I would love to have put him higher. I really would have, but his peaks have been mostly in qualifying, which is great, but you don't win points on Saturday. I mean, he was essentially level with Nico Hulkenberg over the first half of the season, a man known for his one-lap prowess. In the second half of the year, Nico opened up that gap a tad, but still not by a crazy amount. It was still within a 10th average over the course of the entire season. The problem for Gabby is that there were too many incidents, retirements littered throughout his season, and the peaks of race finishes weren't there, and that reflects in his points. He finished behind Pierre Gasly. He was the lowest point scorer of the year. A promising start, mind you, though. I think he actually held himself very, very well relative to Nico. Just wasn't able to execute enough. And when you see what some of the other rookies did this year, I feel confident in my pick and putting in P15. And as for you, you've gone Liam Lawson, P15, 5.25 out of 10, gaining 3 places from where you put him mid-season. P14, unchanged from where I put him mid-season. It is still Lewis Hamilton. What a year. It started so promisingly, didn't it? Of course, China, great weekend all round, on pace with Charles Leclerc, won the sprint race just behind Charles in the feature race. All good until the double disqualification. And from then on, it didn't really pick up at all, did it? As much as he demonstrated some very, very good wall-to-wall racing at times, there's not much more positive I can say about this year. It's been painful, this transition year, his absolute worst season in Formula One. No question, in a car that even Charles has been struggling with visibly at times, so you have to give him some benefit of doubt from that point of view. Such fine margins in F1 right now, even though he's averaged within a couple of attempts of Charles Leclerc in qualifying, that's been enough to do the damage. 4 Q3 exits in a row at the end of the season. I just really hope whatever work gets done over the winter, because 25 was always going to be an adjustment season for Lewis. He wouldn't have anticipated this much adjustment would be needed, but you learn most from the mistakes, and there were a lot of mistakes this year, both from him and the team, and I really, really hope this amazing career doesn't end with a whimper, you know? And as for you in P14, you've put Pierre Gasly with 6.21 out of 10, dropping 5 places. You put in P9 mid-season. P13, I've put Pierre Gasly. Actually, for me, there's a bit of a jump here. I think from Pierre upwards, the rest of the drivers I all consider to have had good seasons, actually. Lewis not had a good season, but for me, there's a clear break, clear distinction here. Because to score 22 points in that Alpine is kind of mad, and he did execute on most of the opportunities that presented themselves to him. He managed 10 out of 24 Q3s and got a 1 in 6 SQ3 hit rate, meaning 11 out of 30 over the entire season. Bahrain and a wet Silverstone were very big peaks for him as well. It's just really difficult, isn't it, to rate Pierre when you've got, you know, 2 rookie teammates and all the up and down nature there. You've got a power disadvantage. You've got some tracks where it hurts you more than others. No one else is running a Renault power unit as well, so you can't really compare directly to any rivals. When Pierre's finishing P17, 18, 19, is it him extracting everything from the car? Is it him having a poor weekend, etc, etc? This is really hard to judge, so this could be harsh, and I hope his loyalty gets rewarded next year with a lovely Mercedes power unit and a lovely David Sanchez designed Renault chassis. And as for you in P13, 6.26 out of 10, Gabriel Bortoleto, 1 position down from your mid-season ranking. New year, new me, new website. Perhaps that is something you're interested in for 2026, and that's where today's video sponsor, Squarespace, comes in. The all-in-one website building platform designed from the ground up to be easy to use. Thousands of beautiful drag and drop templates, zero coding knowledge needed, all bound together by their incredible Blueprint AI software, award-winning as well, that makes it just a breeze. Whether you're an online store looking to freshen up your digital footprint, whether you've got a blog, whether you've got a portfolio, it does not matter. Squarespace is completely free to try as well, and it only asks for any money when you want to publish your finished website live to the world. So there's nothing to stop you playing around with it to your heart's content to see if it's right for you. And I reckon it will be. So when that time comes, head to squarespace.com/TOMMO'S to get 10% off of your very first website or domain. P12, Andrea Kimi Antonelli. What a season. What a season for many a reason for Kimi. So young, so green. Got a lot of prep from Mercedes, granted, coming into the year, but this was always going to be a season for learning, and I think he's done a lot of it. I mean, the peaks are clear, right? 2 amazing P3 podiums in Canada and Vegas. Followed his vastly more experienced teammate George Russell home on both of those occasions, and then P2 in Brazil, where he was quicker than George at every single point of that weekend, which is kind of crazy. Granted, the Imola to Zandvoort leg did stink. He obviously hit Max in Austria, he hit Charles in Zandvoort as well. There were many troughs from Kimi this year, probably the lowest troughs of any rookie, you could argue, with the unforced errors, but to on multiple occasions absolutely hold your own alongside George Russell, who is by far the most intimidating teammate of any of the rookie teammates this year. There's a lot to be said for that. And as for you in P12, you have also gone Andrea Kimi Antonelli with 6.70 out of 10. Again, 2 places down from mid-season. We both put in P10 mid-season. We both put in P12 end of season. P11, Nico Hulkenberg. The boy finally did it. He finally got that blooming podium, didn't he? Spain, Australia, Vegas were all big highlights as well. The reason he's not higher for me was he would just be guilty of going a bit amiss. A driver of his quality, you know, Bortoleto very much ran him in qualifying completely level at the start of the season, which I felt like wasn't kind of good enough, really. However, do not get it twisted. This has been a great season for Nico. His first year at the team as well, apart from, of course, his 1-year stint in 2013. He's got to be very, very happy with how this season's gone. And I think Audi, actually, as much as I've put both their drivers outside of the top 10, should be pretty happy with what their pairing's looking like going into their first season as Audi proper next year. And as for you, you've also gone Nico Hulkenberg P11, but what's kind of mad, you put in P3 in the mid-season rating, which was kind of crazy. You've dropped him 8 places with a 7.01 out of 10. P10, Ollie Bearman for me, 5 places up from where he was mid-season. Now, he did have a messy start to the year. Undoubtedly, he was very, very close to Esteban in qualifying. However, the mistakes were there. There's a reason he almost got a ban, right? Because he had 1 too many shunts. Silverstone was just, I don't know what he was thinking. But no other rookie this year has been able to just dominate for periods of the season their experienced teammate, vastly more experienced teammate, quite like Ollie has been able to dominate Esteban in this kind of second half of the year. In quali, it's almost been 3/10 the average gap in this second half. Like, crazy. Leclerc 2018-esque, you could say, almost single-handedly dragging Haas up to P8 and almost nipping Aston Martin to P7. You know, Esteban woke up in Abu Dhabi, but Ollie just made him look way second best for way too much of this season, and that hurts Esteban's rating, but also helps Ollie's. And you know what? If things don't start looking up for Lewis anytime soon, at least Ferrari know their future is in safe hands with Bearman. And your pick for P10, Alex Albon, 7.05, 3 places down from where you had in mid-season. P9, I've gone Alex Albon, 5 places down from where I put him mid-season. I had him P4 at the start of the year, blinding out the gates with all this pressure, this expectation that Carlos Sainz was going to slap him up. It did not happen. Of course, Carlos's struggles were just as much on the team as they were him, but Alex did what he had to do. He was racing Ferraris in Miami. They were great times at the start of the year. It wasn't even the last half of the season. The last third of the season is where he's just completely dried up points-wise, and Alex deserves a massive credit for his start of year. He also deserves criticism for his end, although again, Williams, I think, really did not help themselves far too often this year. Again, the ongoing joke. Only one Williams can have a good weekend, and it was always Alex at the start of the year. And in the last third, it seemed to always be Carlos. 70 points in the first 16 weekends of the year, and no podiums as well, right? Alex was driving well enough that if the opportunity had presented itself to get a podium, I'm sure he would have got it, just as Carlos did. But all too often, quali execution just seemed to get in the way on his side of the garage at the end of the year, which is a shame, but I think it bodes well. Going into next year, I think Williams have got a hell of a lineup on their hands. And as for you in P9, I'm not surprised about this. You've gone Fernando Alonso, 7.17 out of 10, gaining 2 places from where you put him mid-season. P8, I've gone Carlos Sainz, gaining 5 places from where I put him mid-season. He's ahead of Alex Albon in my rankings. Even though Albon got more points in the end, 73 to 64, I do believe that actually Carlos was slightly more impressive this year. Again, first year at the team, that's one thing. Then to have such a difficult early period of the year where actually Ferrari were kind of all right at the start of the year as well, that must have hurt even more. But then to recover it so well and really bring the team with him, I was just super impressed with Carlos's approach throughout the year. He's got a very, very mature head on his shoulders. Again, this bodes really, really well for Williams moving forward. Baku and Qatar were huge, and also again they never upgraded this car all season, so you'd have expected the Williams to be less competitive at the end of the year, and that's where Carlos really showed his best to the world, that he can actually bring performance and do bits in a Williams, and I'm incredibly hopeful for next year. And I could have put him higher, but I didn't, because you can't forget about those early season struggles, which again weren't just on him but also were somewhat on him. And as for you in P8, you've put Ollie Bearman, 7.28 out of 10, gaining 7 places from where you put him mid-season. 7! You put him P15 mid-season, P8 end of season. Is that recency bias? You let me know in the comments below. P7, Fernando Alonso, gaining 5 places from where I put him mid-season. He was P12 back then, but no points in the first 8 rounds of the year. As he said himself, word for word, in Imola, I'm the unluckiest driver in the world. Started that race P5, finished P11. Here's some stats, right? 5 times he's finished P7, including a sprint, and his P5 in Hungary was the highlight of what was ultimately a very, very strong season, in my opinion. Was it perfect? No, but he had the underlying pace to absolutely dominate Lance Stroll over 3 tenths, almost 3.5 tenths on average in qualifying against your very, very, very experienced, much, much, much younger teammate. Exceptional racecraft and decision making. They could have easily, Aston Martin, finished P9 in the Constructors without Fernando's contributions, and he deserves credit for them at, what, 43, whatever he is now. It's just so impressive how he's still so good, and particularly how he's still so competitive in qualifying. Vamos, Fernando, love your work. And talking of Vamos, P7 for you, Carlos Sainz, 7.50 out of 10. You put in P16 mid-season, which means he's gained 9 positions. I know the start of his year was bad, but when you put in P16 mid-season, I couldn't believe it. And I think P7's fair for Carlos. I just think you were just insane to him in the mid-season ranking. But there you go. At least you came round to him in the end. P6, I've gone Isack Hadjar. We are at the sharp end, and my rookie of the season is undoubtedly Hadjar. He's been so good, so impressive. From relative obscurity, there was nowhere near the attention on Isack compared to certainly Ollie, certainly Antonelli coming into this year, and he has just blown everyone's expectations out of the water. And I'm chuffed for him getting that Red Bull seat, because as much as it hurts as a Yuki fan seeing him leave, you cannot say that Isack does not deserve it. Consistently outpaced Lawson throughout the season, who of course had a difficult year himself, but you can only beat what's alongside you, and Lawson was still way better prepared than Isack going into this year. Bounced back from that horrific weekend in Australia that could have easily damaged his mentality, but he did not let that happen. 4 P11s alongside an absolute plethora of point scoring finishes. The Zandvoort podium was absolutely clutch, of course benefiting from Lando's misfortune, but still put himself in the position to capitalise. Should have got P6 in Qatar if not for that DNF right at the end, which he was rightly fuming about. Like, regardless of him being a rookie, I think he was probably the most consistent driver in the entire midfield all season. 16 out of 24 Q3s, 3 out of 6 SQ3s, and only out in Q1 twice all season. And as for you in P6, we've got to have some words here. Charles Leclerc, P7.89, gains 2 positions from you putting P8 mid-season. Really? P5. I can't believe I'm actually putting Oscar Piastri P5, but here we are. 4 positions down from his P1 in my mid-season rankings. It all just went wrong, didn't it, Oscar? For me, you look at these final 5 drivers and you have to analyse their dips just as much as their peaks. And I would say more than Max, more than Lando, more than George, more than Charles. Oscar's dip in Azerbaijan was deeper than anyone else's, and then his just lack of pace in Austin, Mexico, Sao Paulo and Vegas relative to his teammate, it just completely unravels what was looking to be an absolutely exceptional season. Will we fully ever get to the bottom of what exactly was the issue for Oscar at the end of the year? Like, I don't think it was one thing. I think it was, like most things in life, it's a plethora of different things coming together and working against him. If it is low confidence in those low grip dry conditions that robbed him of pace towards the end of the season that Lando was able to get out of the car, then it is by definition a skill issue and something he needs to improve and work on. Otherwise he will come across the exact same problems next year. And you know what as well, if those weaker performances came at the start of the season, then I would give him a bit more benefit of the doubt, because it's the start of his 3rd year in F1. But by the end of his 3rd year in F1, that's still a chunk more experience on top of what he's already accumulated in 23-4 and now 25. I wanted the driver who deserved it most to win, I think throughout the entire season, and for most of the season that driver was Oscar. I felt like he deserved it and merited winning the title for the vast majority of it. But by Abu Dhabi, I didn't feel that way anymore. You have gone Isack Hadjar, 7.96, almost 8 out of 10, level with where you put in mid-season as well. What did I say? Hyper consistent, Isack Hadjar, lovely jubbly. P4 for me is Charles Leclerc in what was a incredibly frustrating Ferrari team car environment. Only missed 1 Q3 all season, including sprint qualifyings by the way, and almost every single weekend this year practically maximised the package that was underneath him. Silverstone was very, very poor and very, very out of character. One of the most difficult races of my career, to quote the man himself, seeing him finish P14 in those mixed conditions. Also had a run-in with Carlos that race as well, which kind of ruined his results. Look, I think Oscar's lowest trough in Baku was lower than Charles' lowest trough in Silverstone. So I have to put Leclerc higher, because I think for the rest of the year, Charles extracted the ceiling of what was probably a trickier car to drive than McLaren as well, especially at the end of the year. Jesus Christ. For me, Charles Leclerc, after Max Verstappen, is still the number 2 best F1 driver in the sport right now, but he did not have the 2nd best season. For me, it was 4th best. For you, 4th best was Oscar Piastri, 8.16 out of 10. You put in P1 mid-season, which means he drops 3 places for you. P3, for me, championship winner, Lando Norris. And actually, to mark the occasion, for the first ever time. I've never tried a Monster in my life, but they had Lando's Monster on the meal deal when I got my lunch earlier. So we are going to give it a go. Never had a Monster in my life. Certainly not this one. This is 0 sugar. It's not exploded, which is a good start. Let's try this out. Smells like Orangina. The taste is familiar. It's okay. It's not what I expected it to be. It's way more like fruity. I'll definitely finish this off. I won't let it go to waste. Would I get it again? I think there's other drinks that I would probably go for over this in the meal deal, but if someone gave this to me, I'd chug it. 5 being bang average, I'd give this a 6.75 out of 10. But anyway, back to Lando. Do I think he had more high-profile mistakes, errors, misjudgments than Charles Leclerc this season? I do. However, you've got to look at the way Lando clutched up at the end of the year and delivered the performances when he needed to. Most needed to, right? Mexico, Brazil, prime examples, and just got the job done. Made Oscar look second best for that end third of the season, and that made the difference. It was only 2 points in the end to Max, not Oscar. 13 points ahead of Oscar. The Zandvoort DNF. Yes, of course, there were times in the season that Lando got fortunate, but by the end of the year, I think we were seeing him drive with a freedom and showing the talent that he's always had. 18 out of 24 podiums, 4 out of 6 sprint podiums as well. This year means that he was in that top 3 more than any other driver in 2025, and that has to count for something. He may have made early season mistakes in China, Bahrain, Saudi, and of course Canada, but Lando was never slow. He was never just off the pace, unlike Oscar was at the end of the year. And it may have not been the most impressive championship of all time, but he got it done. He stood up when it counted and delivered. And you lot seem to agree, because 8.52 out of 10, you've also gone for Lando Norris. P2 for me is George Russell. Probably the most consistent driver this year, possibly, maybe. He's the only driver to complete every single race anyway, and only missed out on 2 laps because of the DRS train in Monaco. And talking of Monaco, that was the only weekend all year he didn't score points. In the points every single other weekend, all the other 23. Canada and Vegas were big wins, right, in a season dominated by the McLarens and Max. He still managed to get it done when those opportunities presented themselves. And the Howler weekends, I mean, Silverstone, he made a gamble, which is so on brand for George, to just gamble something crazy, went on slicks way too early, and that completely undone his Silverstone weekend. And Brazil was somewhat concerning, a weekend where your rookie teammate has consistently outpaced you the entire weekend is not great. But other than them 2 blots, it's a pretty faultless report card for George Russell. And it absolutely sets him up amazingly for a 2026 title push, assuming that Mercedes engine is going to be the quickest, and assuming the Mercedes chassis is going to be the best integrated into that power unit. It's looking good. And you lot have also put him P2 with 8.54 out of 10. Only 0.02 ahead of Lando Norris, by the way. So P2 and 3 were super close for you lot. Because then finally in P1 for me is Max Verstappen. For you is Max Verstappen, 9.49 out of 10. We both put him P3 in mid-season. We both put him P1 end of season. Was it a perfect season? No, that doesn't exist. Ultimately, I mean, it was pretty close. The head loss moment in Spain, of course, and spinning at the end of the safety car in Silverstone as well weren't great, but other than that, I mean, the way he was able to drag that car kicking and screaming, drag that team kicking and screaming with all the change going on in the background as well, and almost win this championship and come up shy by just 2 points. Come on. Suzuka pole, the move on Oscar in Imola, just measured consistency from Monza onwards. This season will not be remembered as a World Championship year for Max Verstappen, but this will be a season that the streets will not forget. He did a hell of a job this year and is mine and your driver of 2025. That is a wrap on the season. We are done. It's basically it. There's only one piece of content left to come from the Tommo YouTube channel this year, which of course is my big fat quiz of the year that I do at the end of every single year. So make sure you check in for that. I'll also do one last TOMMO'S race CHINWAG to wrap up the season. So keep your eyes peeled, like, subscribe, interact however you can. What a season we've had and what a season we've got ahead of us next year. I cannot wait. My name's Tommo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.